Hey, Be'ezra Hashem. Today's daf is Masechta Bava Basra, daf Kuf Samach Ches. And we're going to start from Kuf Samach Zayin, 167, 5 lines from the bottom. Let's make it big. So we're discussing over here, as you know, little stories. I love these little stories. Basically, the Mishnah said that a scribe can write up a receipt for a woman that she received her ksuba. Now, she's supposed to hand that to her husband when she does receive, or ex-husband, when she does receive her ksuba. Now, why would somebody write the receipt before receiving anything? Simply, as we learned in, we're going to learn, I mean, it's simply, you didn't always have somebody who knows how to write in the town. So in case somebody a scribe came to the town who knows how to write, they would hire him to write the documents, even though the transaction never happened. And the woman would hold on to the receipt, have witnesses sign on the receipt, and then when the time comes, she would distribute that receipt to her husband. Okay? And then after she received her ksuba. But look at this story. Ahu Tavra, there was this receipt, the Hava Chosim Alei Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba was signed on this receipt. Now, a woman came to her husband and she demanded her ksuba, and the husband pulled out a receipt that he paid it. And Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba signed on it. But the problem was the woman claimed that Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba never signed on her receipt. In other words, he probably signed on somebody else's receipt, a woman with the same name, and she gave it to her husband, to this woman's husband. So she probably, you could buy a phony receipt in the black market. So the husband bought a phony receipt. And so she went to Rabbi Yirmiyah Abba and asked, and he said, Asya l'kamei itzasa amrele. So this woman came to Rabbi Yirmiyah Abba and she told him, Lav ani ana havoy. I'm not that person on that receipt. You signed on the receipt, and my husband is holding on to that receipt, but I'm not the person that you signed the receipt for. You probably signed it for somebody else, and that somebody else gave it to my husband. So Rabbi Yirmiyah Biyama initially,
The husband's name is not on the paper
let's say that they had the woman and the man had the same name, right? Let's,
of another couple.
right, or right, of another couple, and this other couple, she wrote it for that couple, for that woman, the same, who had the same name, and she gave it to her husband, to this lady's husband. So you have two Ruvain who married Rachel in living in the same city. And this Rachel, one of the Rachels, came to her husband, says, I want to get my ksuba. So this Reuven pulled out a receipt. So this Rachel went and to Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba and said, you signed in this receipt, and my husband pulled it out that she paid my ksuba, but I never received anything. You probably wrote this receipt for the other Rachel, and she gave it to my husband. She flipped it. So Amos, Rabbi Yirmiyah Amos said, when I signed on the receipt, I knew, I thought I wasn't signing for you. I wasn't sure if you're the woman that's written on this receipt, if my intention was for you. Is this the same Rachel? So I agreed with you initially. The Amrele, then I had now a discussion with the other witnesses on the receipt, and they say, it is the same woman. She got older, and her voice changed. That's why you don't recognize her. In other words, this rabbi wasn't so precise in identifying the woman he was signing for. He thought he wasn't signing for this particular woman, and he thought he was signing for somebody else, but then they told him, no, it's that woman that you think it is. It just, she looks different now because she got older. So initially he thought he missigned, and then he changed. Rabbi Yirmiyah Abba changed his opinion and said, no, I signed correctly. Amar Abaya said, Afagav the Amar Rabbanan, even though the rabbi said, we go to Amid Kufcham Samaches, Amid Aleph, Kaven Shehigit Shuv Ein Chayzer Magid. Once you say testimony, you can't change your opinion. If you say a testimony, you can't change your opinion. But Surva merabonan lav orche lemeda. A rabbi is not so precise when it comes to identifying a woman. So if initially a rabbi, like such as Rabbi Yirmi Barabba, thought he misidentified a woman, and then he thought about it and says, "Oh no, I was correct." We allow him to change his mind. Normally, we never allow you to change your mind. Once you say testimony, you can't change your mind. But in this case, we allow the rabbi to change his mind because when he thinks things over, he'll be more precise. Let's see another story. Ahu Tabra, the Haver Chosim Alei Rabbi Yirmi Ba'aba. The same Rabbi Yirmi Ba'ama was signed on a receipt for a woman that received her ksuba, and the husband pulled it out. So Amr Alei, so she came to Rabbi Yirmi Ba'aba and says, Lav Anohavoy, I'm not the woman in this receipt. And somehow my husband is holding on to a receipt that you signed on it, that I received my ksuba and I didn't receive it. Amr Leah, he's told her, Ivra Antavas, it's true, it was you. I know for a fact that you were there and I know how you looked. And when I wrote the receipt, I know who I gave it to. So here you see Rabbi Yirmi Ba'ama was very careful to examine women to make sure that he has the right person. Amar Abaya said, Afagav Ditzur Rabbanan Lav Orche, even though a rabbi, it's not his way of to being identifying women, to know precisely women. But Kavan the duck. As soon as if a rabbi, if he starts paying attention, we can trust him that he has it exactly right, that he's not confusing two different women. Generally, rabbis are not looking at women. But if a rabbi tells you, I'm sure it was this woman, then we believe him. But the Gemara is going to tell us now that if you're a Talmud Chacham, it was almost like a Hasidic wedding. You saw your kala once. So Amar Abaya said, "Haitzurva merabonam the azal lekidushe itisa." This rabbi, this young Talmud Chacham, that wants to give kedushin to a woman and then wants to marry her a year later, and he doesn't have too much of contact with the woman. So nidbar amaretz bahadei, very fascinating. He should always take an amaretz with him. So the amaretz will look at the girl and say, know for sure how this girl looks, so that when the rabbi or when the Talmud Chacham comes to the wedding, he will be able to ask the amaretz, was this the woman I gave kedushin to? Right? Because Dilma machlafe lemina, maybe they're going to make a switcheroo like they did by Yaakov and with Lavan doing to Yaakov. He's going to do a switcheroo, and so he's not going to know that this is not the woman that he gave kedushin to. So the Amaritz will take a look at the girl under the chuppah and says, "Yeah, no, this is the right woman." So that's what the Gemara says. Okay, interesting point. It's hard to identify. You got to give credit to the people that identified that killer. Anyway, okay. So now the Gemara goes like this. We learned in the Mishnah when it comes to writing the get, who pays for the scribe? So generally speaking, that the one that benefits the most, that's the one that pays for the scribe. So the habal noisen sochar, the baal would pay for the payment of the scribe to write a get. My tama. So what's the reason? Well, there you need a reason. It's not clear if he's benefiting. The Amakra, here the Chumash says v'kosav, the husband should write a get, v'nosan, and give it. So who pays for the writing of the get? The husband. Says the Gemara, but nowadays, in the time of the Gemara, the woman pays, like the woman pays for the wedding, she pays for the get too. Why? V'idana, the loyav din and hachit. We don't do this. Why don't we do this? So the Gemara says, because we are afraid shadin rabbanan aisha kihecha deloy lish haye, that we make the woman pay for the scribe, because if you're going to ask the husband to pay for the scribe, he's going to say, I don't have money, or I don't like this scribe or anything like that. So he'll make excuses. In the meantime, the woman's going to be an aguna. So she'll lay out the money to pay for the scribe and then be makna that, or give it over to the husband. And with that, he will give her the get. So nowadays, they made that the woman take responsibility of paying the scribe to write the get. That and the a borrower pays the writing of the document. Okay, the loan documents are paid by the borrower, and probably when you go for a mortgage, who's paying for those legal fees? It's the borrower, because the borrower gets the most benefit. So of course he should pay the least he can do is pay for the scribe. Says the Gemara, Pshita, isn't that obvious that he should pay for the scribe? And says the Gemara, like tzricha bi'iska. We're dealing with a situation where it's like an investment. He's a half borrower, and the lender is lending him money and also investing in the business. So the part that's an investment, the lender can actually get a profit from it. So we would think that the lender in this case should pay for the scribe. So the Mishnah taught us that no, the borrower pays for the scribe. In a sale of a piece of land, who's the benefit? The guy who's buying it. It's so hard to buy a property, right? There's more buyers than sellers. So the buyer pays the scribe. So the Gemara says, Pshita, of course the buyer should pay for the scribe. What that's obvious. He's benefiting. If the seller is selling because there's something wrong with the property, let's say there's an environmental problem on the property, so you would think that it's more the seller's benefit than the buyer's benefit. So the seller, in this case, should pay for the scribe. So the Mishnah teaches us, no, the buyer, because generally it's the buyer that's benefiting more than the seller. So there's one general rule that the buyer of any property, he's the one that pays for the writing of the document. Says the Gemara, and who pays for the writing of the tanoim, of the conditions of the marriage? So the Mishnah says that the father of the bride pays that. So the Gemara says pshita. So of course he should pay for it. I'm sorry. So I'm sorry. The chassan pays for it. The Mishnah said the groom pays for it. Now, of course, because the groom is doing the buying. Just like you told me, when you buy a piece of land, the buyer pays. So when you're buying your wife, the chassan should pay for the writing of the documents. And since Gemara, let's say he's such the best guy, he's the best Talmud Chacham, right? So that it's a benefit for the father-in-law to have such a son-in-law. So I would think the father-in-law is so proud to have such a son-in-law, he should pay for the writing of the document. So the Mishnah says no, generally, and we keep with this rule that the chassan, the acquirer, which is the man, he pays for the writing of the document. So the Gemara says, Pshita. So the Mishnah says that a person who is a contractor or a sharecropper, he pays for the writing of the document. So, of course, he's benefiting it. He's benefiting to use a land that he doesn't have to pay for. He just has to work the land and pay a portion of the profits to the owner of the land. So, of course, since he's the one that's benefiting, he should be writing the document. And says the Gemara, like the Mishnah is teaching you bebura, even in a case where the sharecropper has to leave the land vacant for a year because for whatever reason the land needed some rest. So you would think, since he's not benefiting from the land right away, the owner of the land should pay for the writing of the document. So the Mishnah says, no, the sharecropper pays for the writing of the document. Then the Mishnah says, and the Mishnah pivots and talks about Ein Kaisvin Shitrei Beirurim Elam Dashnei. Mishnah says that two litigants, when they write this Shitrei Beirurim, they both have to be present. As the Mishnah was discussing, the scribe can write a get for a woman and for the man to give to his wife, even though the woman is not present in his office. Only the man is there. Or the woman, the scribe can write a receipt for a woman that she received her ksuba, even though the man is not present there. But if you're writing a Shitrei Beirurim, both litigants have to be there. What is a shitrei berurim? So the Gemara asks, "My shitrei berurim. What is a shitrei berurim?" And says the Gemara, "Hacha targimai." In here, in Bavel, they explained it to be shitrei tanusa. It's like a document that describes what each one has to say. The document says each one what each one has to say, and therefore each one has his own tinus and complaints. So there, both of them have to be there. You write it on, according to the Tanakama, on one piece of document, my claim, my defense, or the opposite defense. And therefore, once you write it down, you can't change it. That's called Shitrei Tanusa. Rav Yir ben Abba Amar, he explained it, Zer bar lo echad, v'zer bar lo echad. Shitrei Berurim is a document which says you choose, one litigant chose this one to be the judge, the other litigant chose his friend to be the judge, and both judges pick a third guy, or both of them pick a third guy. We'll learn more about that. So that's called Shitrei Berurim, and they both have to be present while you're writing up that document. Says Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, let's assume that according to the way our understanding is, it's one document. The Tanakama says you have one document where both litigants write their complaints and their defense, whatever they're saying. So Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, they both don't have to write it on one piece of paper. They can demand that they write it on two separate pieces of paper, which doubles the cost, because now the scribe has to write it on two different pieces of paper. So, but why shouldn't they write it on one piece of paper and save some money? So Reb Shimon Gamliel says, no, the other guy can force the issue. Lema, let us say, if one guy wants to be, a stickler and demand something that he doesn't really benefit from, do we acquiesce to his request? The Marsavar Koifin, the Tanakama holds, we force him. What are you asking to write two different documents when it can be written on one piece of paper? So you're trying to be like somebody from Sodom. So we force you not to break your bad midah and write it on one document. That's the shita of the Tanakama. Shimon Gamliel says, if a guy is crazy enough, he wants his document to be separate, even though he may not have a reason for it, you can't force him to join with the other guy to write one document. If he demands he wants to have it two documents and let it cost more, we have to listen to him. Is that the machlekes? Answers the Gemara, no. The kuli alma koifin. Everybody would agree that you can force somebody to, if he's acting in a such a stickler way, you can force him not to be like a sodomite. Behind the time of the Shimon Gamliel, the Amalei. In other words, the guy has really legitimate reason why he doesn't want to write both his complaints and the other person's complaint on one document, because if the other guy is going to hold on to the document, he's going to always think about how to defend himself and how I try to rip him off. Like this, whatever I'm saying should be in his memory, but not on a piece of paper that he could hold on to. Therefore, he had, according to Shimon Gamliel, the guy had a legitimate reason to demand that it should be written on two separate documents, and therefore we could follow through. And this is not midas adayim. He's not just being an idiot. Says the Mishnah. The Mishnah is discussing over here. Misha para miktas chayvay. A guy paid part of his debt. Now, when you pay the whole debt, you get the document back, right? You get the document, the loan documents back. But he only paid part of the debt. So the hishlish ashtare v'amalai. Im loin nesate l'chom ekan vad yoin plini ten loy ashtare. So the guy gave the document, the lender gave the document to a third party. And the borrower said, he's so sure that if I don't pay you back the balance of what I owe you, then he told the guy holding on to the document, give it back to the lender so that he can recollect the entire debt again. Even though he paid like half the debt already, and therefore the loan documents, part of the loan documents should be returned to the borrower, but it was given to a third party to hold on to. And the borrower said an outrageous claim that if I don't pay the balance of the debt by a certain day, then he told the guy holding on to the document, give it back to the lender, and he can recollect from me again. And unfortunately, it came the time and he didn't pay the full balance. Rabbi Yossi, so the third party should give the document back to the lender to allow him to make a full claim on the entire debt. Rabbi Yehuda said, Lo Yitain, you don't give it back. So Bamai Kumi Palgi says the Gemara, what are they arguing about? Rabbi Yossi says, Asmachta Kanya. If I make an outlandish bet, right? And I want to, and because I'm so confident that I'm not going to lose, but I lost. So the answer is, Rabbi Yossi says, it's an acquisition. I have to follow through on my commitment. Rabbi Yehuda says, if it was obvious that it was such an outlandish statement, loy kanya, then we bet you don't follow through on that. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda said, he said it, because he was confident he would be able to pay the balance at a certain time. And if a legitimate reason came up, so this was an outlandish statement. So we don't hold him to it. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Abba Bavu, Amar Rav, Halacha Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, that you always have to follow whatever comes out of your mouth, every commitment. When they came before Rabami, he would say, they also came to Rabbi Ami, and he said, Rabbi Yochanan said it 2 or 3 times that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. So of course, I'm going to follow Rabbi Yossi. So said Rabbi Ami. And Rabbi Yossi is the one that you follow because Rabbi Yossi had the clearest way of thinking. And therefore, generally, we say the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. But the Gemara concludes over here, the ein halacha Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi. And asmachta loy kanyan. That's what we're going to paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Now the Mishnah discusses Misha Nimchak Shtar Choyven. A guy has a debt instrument, right? A loan document. He's a lender. But when he pulled that out of his drawer, it was erased. And he can't prove what was written on the document, but he knows he lent somebody money. So Ma'amid Olav Adim, he finds new Adim who remember what was written on the document, and they go before Bezdin, and they establish what was written on the original document. Ish Pliny ben Pliny Nimchak Shtari, they'll write this so-and-so, his document was erased. Beyond Pliny, on this day, he made a loan to somebody, and it was X amount, and that's how Pliny Adav, and he had witnesses, and therefore they could, even though everything was erased, but he can, reestablish the loan by getting other witnesses to testify what was written on the original loan document. Says the Gemara, we're on Amud Beis, how do you reestablish something that was erased on a document? You say like this, the Bezdin says, we are 3 people, Onu Pliny, Pliny, and we are 3 people in Bezdin. This lender came to us, and he has this erased star that he lent somebody money. So they rewrite the star based on what somebody else testified what was written in the star. But if they write, in addition to that, the Bezdin writes that we even went ahead and asked the original witnesses that were written on the star, is it true? And they agreed that it was true. So then, Goiva, we allow the lender to collect from this document. Then it doesn't have to bring any more proofs. If not, then he does have to bring a proof. In other words, just because you have witnesses that say it was said this and this on the document, doesn't mean the document is authentic, that you actually lend somebody money. The witnesses are just testifying what was written on the document. You still would have to bring proof that this what was written on the document was actually something that happened. Now the Brisa says, Nikra, if a document is ripped up, puzzle, it's disqualified. Niskareya, if it got torn, kosher, then it's kosher. We're going to say, Nimchak or Nitashtes, let's say it got erased or it got smudged. Imrishume Nikar, if you can recognize what basically was written on the document, kosher, then it's a valid document. Now, what's the difference? Heichadam and Nikra. What's a difference between something that was ripped up? Heichad and Skareya. How do you define something that got torn? Amar Rav Yehuda, Nikra, a torn document means Karesh Bezdin. It looks like Bezdin ripped up the document. Niskareya, if it got torn, Karesh Einish Bezdin. It doesn't look like Bezdin ripped it up. It looks like it happened by itself. So Heichidam Kereshal Bezdin. How does Bezdin rip something up? How do they shred things? Rabbi Yehuda Makom Eidim Makom Azar Makom Atoyrev. That Rabbi Yehuda said that if you see the document is ripped by the most important parts of the document, where the witness is signed, with the date of the sign, where the loan amount, then you know it was purposely shredded, and therefore that document is invalid. Abai Amash Shasiva Erev. If it's written if it's torn in two different directions, that's also a sign that it's not a valid document. And the banks do this all the time. They have to determine if the check is just torn or ripped up, so that's it. One more piece, and then we'll stop. Hani Arboy, the Osil Pumpedisa, Tavakanse Arada Noshi, there was these people that Arabs came to Pumbedisa, and they were trying to confiscate property belonging to people, and the people who own the properties came to buy it and says, please write us another document that we own this property, because the people that are going to confiscate our property, these Ganovim, these Arabs, they're going to take our loan, our deed of the property. So we want you to write another deed, so that in case one day we'll be able to get the property back, we'll have your deed that will show that we still were the original owners of the properties. If one of our original deed gets taken, we'll have the one that you gave to us as proof. Rabbi didn't like the idea. You don't write two deeds on a property. There's a problem, the Rabbi says, that Rav Safra said that you can't have two sales agreement on a document. I can't have, I live in a house in Lawrence, I have one contract of sale. You can't have another contract of sale on the same house, because it leads to problems of foreclosure and things like that, and Abai refused to do that. Have a kadar delay. They were pressing Abai to do it. He told them to write a new document on an erased part of the document, and put the witnesses on the good part of the document. And basically, Abai wrote up a new contract of sale for these people, but he made it in such a way that it would have been disqualified anyway in court. Maybe who cares if he wrote a document and erased it? But we learned that if you could take off the first part and you can see some writing on the part that you erased, it will still be a valid document. So Abai explained, I just told them just to write Aleph Bayis Gimel Daled, bunch of scribble, then erase it. Write the document, the contract, have the Adam sign on the bottom, on the good part of the document. Anyway, that's a disqualified document, but that's the only way Abai would get these people off his back to do something he didn't want to do, which is write another contract of sale on a property that already had one written. Okay, we will stop over here.